Is my mustache coming in clear? That's the only thing that I really care about right now.
That's your intro?
No, of course not. Why would Would I even ask? I asked you for permission to go first.
This needs to be a mini clip.
Oh no, this is all staying in. Okay, no, for my actual introduction.
Okay.
I believe that it is impossible to live life without regret. You're gonna
Absolutely.
You have 15 different paths that any average person can take. You're probably gonna take one, if you're lucky, maybe two. But you will regret those other ones. Regret is just that sensation of knowing things could have been different, completely within the realm of possibility, and they just didn't happen. And I finally have a genuine regret. I regret that I wasn't more involved in the Smash community growing up. It had a formative stage, especially during, say, the Melee years, and it would have been a way to chart the progress of how the internet made things so much easier over time. There was a point where you would only be able to discuss things with people on forums, and people had to record matches onto like JVR or VHS or something, and it would take forever to upload, and it would take forever to download, and it was like 280p. But people took pride in that because they were so passionate about the game. And I mean, I still played other games, I met other friends, did other communities, so I don't regret that. I'm glad that I at least continued to play games throughout the majority of my life. But if I had stopped, I would have regret that too. And now it's like I can get involved in the community now. It's never too late. But I do think about the fact that this is a series very close to me. I kind of wish I took it a little bit more seriously. I would have been better as a player. I would have known more people. But it's hard because at the same time you also think, well, all that time I spent not doing that was time I spent doing something else. So you see, regret is inevitable. You regret something and there's nothing you can do about it. The reason why I wanted to start by saying that is today we're talking about benefits of gaming.
Yes.
And
no chalkboard again.
No chalkboard. Well, I started like using putting the chalkboard as a thumbnail. I draw it like you've probably seen it. You've seen it.
Yeah.
You've seen it. Yeah, and
so it's a little classic. Like we reach for it,
we
put it down, and
chalkboard, and I mean we're
it's
just
like the iconic. We've now begun.
We don't have a home. So
I've been living by teleporting myself on the internet. It's very messy.
Yeah, I strategically worked out where to stay on the bus so that I never have to not be on the bus. There are some.
You're very well groomed for a bus rider.
Yeah, some of the bus drivers, they have tips. They've worked with worse. But yeah, the reason why I wanted to say that is because there is no doubt in my mind that had I done that, I would have been happy with that choice, because everything involved in that is beneficial to my life, and it would have been beneficial. We're talking about being involved in a community. We are talking about making friends. We are talking about growing, helping to grow an environment, helping to grow a community, and also growing personally as well. When you're in competition, you are forced to always adapt, to improve, to evolve, and to become a better version of yourself, at least as far as the game is concerned. The rest of it, now, you never know. So let's talk about that. Let's talk about what are the benefits to gaming.
Well, it's really fun and really popular, I guess, to talk about the negative things of gaming. Just want to get this quickly out of the way so we don't have to bring it up again the rest of the episode. A lot of course, concerned parents talking about how, games make their kids more violent, or games do this. Games are still relatively new. I mean, we've had them for a long time.
Video games? Relatively new.
Video games.
Games have been around since people were allowed to kill each other with swords, but go on.
But video games are still relatively new. I mean, they really were a last generation thing, and what games look like last generation, what look like this generation are different, and even the forms are different. Like my mother, for example, loves Solitaire and Candy Crush. So in her mind, games are always just kill time, silliness, whatever. So when I'm in there trying to explain to her, so when I'm just grumbling over why my StarCraft 2 build order didn't work and how my opponent was able to bait me into focusing onto anti-air defenses, she doesn't care. She's like, her definition of gaming is a small box. So everything else is like, all gaming in her mind is wasting time. And we've also had large number of studies showing how gaming, again, makes people more violent, makes people, more agitated. And that is just, it's the lowest hanging fruit. To figure out if someone's become more agitated or more violent is really easy, because not holding the door over for someone can make them less empathetic, less, nice, more violent. Not really having time to deal with people who frustrate them can seem like that. And there could be 100 factors that tie into that. And yes, after losing a match of Dota 2 for the dumbest of reasons, such as your... No. But for the dumbest of reasons, you can get a little frustrated. But generally speaking, I'm a mature adult. I get over that before I, walk out of that room and have to deal with other human beings. It's a lot harder to test if a game makes people more empathetic or makes people nicer or, again, causes people to think differently. I truly believe that from playing all the RTS games I've played and the RPG games and those kind of things, I am better at resource management. And I have been in management positions before as part of jobs. And I feel to a certain extent that has carried over. For a while, I was part of a multi-game guild called Hasn't Paid Me to Plug Them, hasn't paid me to plug them, which is not actually the name.
What's the name?
Okay, The Art of Warfare. I was part of The Art of Warfare for a while. We were in a game called Section 8, which is a really great game that was eventually killed by Games for Windows Live and the developers being idiots. But...
Well, clearly the developers weren't paying you either.
Yeah, the developer. Well, the game itself, in the game, I joined this guild because it was cool to use a VoIP system to communicate with each other, coordinate, here's squads, here's whatever. And having a sense of leadership was nice because it's a very objective-focused game. And then what happened when they did a whole bunch of reforming, they thought that I had decent potential to be a squad commander. So all of a sudden, I would go from taking orders to being the one giving them. And I'm pretty sure they give that to me just because I had good attendance. And I even said, like, when they gave it to me, he's like, I have no fucking clue what I'm doing, but if you're willing to teach me, I'm willing to learn. And they apparently really liked that attitude. And I ran 2 successful, referred to as campaigns. So, there were several maps there, whatever. Won both of them. I made sure that the person who was basically my second command was someone who thought differently than me, so he'd be pumping suggestions up the pipe that I wouldn't be thinking of. And I do think I got a lot better at knowing how to communicate with people, knowing how to objectify, this is what we do, this is what we do, this is what we do, from those 2 campaigns, from all that stuff. And it's harder to quantify that because you would need to put me in a leadership position before I was doing that in the game, and then put me in a leadership position after I was doing that game, or have me, I wasn't a manager at the time. So it becomes really hard to gauge, have I become a better commander-in-chief? Mm-hmm. Have I, become a better leader of men and women? We actually have a surprising number of women in that guild through this game. You need to pretty much almost set up laboratory conditions to figure that out.
Mm-hmm. One of the things that I thought of, having heard you say that, is how I've used the idea of game... Bless you. I've used the idea of game as a way to approach problems in real life and try to figure out how to resolve these problems. Now, games are, in a sense, mostly threat-free. I mean, if you lose a game, aside from your own personal disappointment or whatever, you might lose some in-game resources.
There was a horror movie where apparently if you lost the video game, something hunt you down in real life.
Yeah, and there was also one with Jeffrey Butler or Gerard Butler, or one of those two. Guy from 300. The players would play, and then the actors, or sorry, there was like avatars. They were real people. So if the avatar was killed, well, you killed. But the kid didn't have any consequence.
Yeah, that movie was silly.
But yeah, I mean, the concept is there. I mean, if you're responsible for somebody else's life, even if they are a principal or a prisoner, sorry. The great thing about failing in a game, though, is that you still feel some weight to the consequence of your actions. And I think this happened a lot more around the time of, say, Ultima Online, or even, I guess, EverQuest, maybe, Diablo 1, and a lot of Tibia was another one too. In a lot of these games, RuneScape, another one, you would die and you would lose items. You would pay a pretty serious price for your death. You didn't just have to spend time reclaiming your corpse. You didn't have to. You weren't set back. You didn't have to start the quest over, or you did have to do all of that. Plus, you had actually been set back financially.
Yeah, one of the things that I've actually commented on off this show that I don't really like in games is that they are sort of limiting consequences. Like the whole fight for your life system, like we see in Borderlands and even Guild Wars 2, is sort of cheap because essentially means you go down and then you have to kill something in order to get back up again. Or in the case of Guild Wars, if you and your opponent die at the same time, you just need to wait for bandage to start, then you get yourself back up. Now, I get that this is a natural extension of people being able to revive each other on the spot, and I'm fine with that. There's nothing wrong, but the whole idea of you're down, you get to fight to get back up, and even going back to Guild Wars 2 as an example, if you fully die, the consequence is you have to go back to a waypoint, you have to pay a fee to repair your armor, or sorry, they got rid of the fee at this point, and that's really it.
Yeah.
And they're getting better at that. I like to say, like, a lot of the newer maps, especially in the expansion, will put the waypoints pretty far away from the major dangers. So if you die to some kind of boss because you're trying to get a hero point, such as the champion of Balthazar, dear fucking God, I am tired of fighting that guy to help other people.
On the opposite end of that, I just remember in Minecraft, you die in that, everything drops.
Oh, yeah.
And what's great about that style of gameplay is that you are your own risk. The more you're willing to delve into a mine, the more reward you might get. But if you were to die, that consequence would just be so much worse.
Yeah.
And the reason why this has been great in real life is that being able to take a pragmatic game-like approach to resolving problems and conflicts doesn't mean you're not taking it seriously. It means that you're able to examine it in a way that you're accustomed to. And because games have consequences, and because these consequences can actually be detrimental and something that you would avoid, much like you would avoid in real life, the training, the things that you learn from that does apply into real life.
Using StarCraft 2 as an example again, it's a very much involved game. I mean, one of the big tip for anyone who's actually transitioning into StarCraft 2, and this does relate to our topic, I'm not completely going off on a tangent here, there is a tech tree. I know a lot of people, especially if you play other RTSs, the tech tree is very much internalized. Like, you'll open up a menu, you'll click research this, you click research this, etc. In StarCraft 2, your tech tree is externalized. You have to build a building and then have the building research the upgrades. And if you lose the building, you lose access to just it being there. Like, you can't make a certain unit from your standard ordinary barricade until you have a robotics bay active. This kind of thing. And so when you actually start getting good with the game, you realize that what you really need to do is start breaking down the various things. You have this much material. This is when you build this. This is when you build this. Your opponent just scouted you. Shit. What do I have to change? What do I have to do? Send a scout into his bay. Like, you learn to break problems down, and that is something they keep drilling into our heads pretty much all the damn time now. When you have a huge problem, break it down. And especially in RTS games in general, your enemy is doing too much of this. You need to figure out this. Your enemy attacked you with a whole bunch of anti-air. Or with a whole bunch of airborne units. Focus on getting your anti-air defenses up, and then it turns out your opponent did that to potentially psych you into focusing on too much anti-air.
Do you ever face those hurdles where you're beaten so badly in a game, you're like, why do I play this game?
Yes.
Yeah. It happens, and it happens in real life too. When you're in
dating.
If you're
let's just fuck all the subtext there.
Well,
dating.
I was going to say in a professional pursuit, although I will admit that yours is probably more on point. And you're like, I don't know why I fucking God, so good. Why do I do this? There's something about the game though that makes you come back to it. And you usually come back to it with a deeper understanding, because what happened was your mind has to go through that pain process where you're agonizing over something not going your way. And that's your mind getting ready to strengthen itself so that the next time you approach it, you are stronger at it and you do have a better chance of understanding what to do. And that's how you grow as a gamer. And that's how you grow in real life too. But in real life, it's very easy to just walk away from a problem and never want to approach it again. But gaming will teach you that you will face obstacles that in your present state you cannot possibly conceivably get past. And you will be frustrated and you may consider giving up. And in real life, you might be able to give up. And in real life, you might not be incentivized to come back to it because there's no reward waiting for you. Not really, you don't know.
Yeah.
But if you are trained and you understand that you have to admit that you can do this better and you can be better, then you go back and you might succeed.
Yeah, it's...
With dating, that's non-negotiable. Yeah. You will always fail.
Yeah. Okay. You will find the one. We will both find the ones. Separate ones, hopefully.
Hopefully.
Yes.
That wouldn't...
This is a gaming show.
If there's any one person that I would have like a blast competing with over somebody's affection, it would be you, because you would agree to most of my terms.
It's a matter of, like, this is a gaming show, not a sitcom. No. So I think we just saw the... I would actually argue that also it's kind of the reverse that's helped me in terms of it. Like, something I learned very quickly in Dota 2 is there's going to be rangers, there's going to be trolls, there's going to be angry people. Mm-hmm. But one day I basically sat down and had a tiny revelation. When you line up for a game of Dota 2, we're going to use solo queue as an example, even though I usually am lining up with you or one of our other kinsmen.
Sure.
But solo queue as an example, there's me. There's 4 other people on the team. And whenever they start fighting, I always keep using the example, hey guys, there's 5 people, we have 5 enemies playing this game with us, let's not make any more. It's cutesy, it's fun, and generally speaking, it's actually pretty damn effective. And then if I have anyone who starts raging or starts, pissing, yelling or doing insults, especially on the other team, first thing I do, tab, mute. I don't have to deal with this, so I don't have to deal with this. And to a certain extent, there have been moments in real life where I've actually just adopted that policy. Like, some argument is breaking out or something is building up or, something is happening and, I want to get into it. I want to have my 2 cents heard. I want to, really like, holy fuck, what are you guys doing? Let me, educate you ignorant asses. And I just think, no, I'm not going to gain anything from this. I'm just, I'm going to do the mute and walk away. A while back on my Facebook page, I posted that from now on, I resolve to walk away from any conversation that digresses into gender or sexual politics. I'm not bashing those politics in general, but I do feel like they get brought up into conversations they were never meant to be a part of. And I've decided, even though I have my 2 cents to say on both of those things, if this wasn't the original topic, then I'm not going to do it. I'm going to find another table. Thank you. Mm-hmm.
Another thing that gaming has helped me come to understand is... I got 2 things. One of them is that when you're... and this is something that I happen to learn a little bit now that I'm a little bit older, but you really do need to make everything that you're doing count as much as you can. Like, when I write a random thought on Twitter, and I say it in my profile, I try to make every tweet count. I understand that it's only 140 characters, and in the grand scheme of things, it has very little actual consequence. But for however much it can matter, I try to make it matter, and I learned that approach from gaming, especially from Dota. One of the bad habits that you can get into is you play the game and you lose or you win, and you don't really reflect, and you just kind of send it away, and then you start the next one. And what you're doing is that you're kind of treating everything like it's all just this one game, which in a sense it is. But what's really happening is that each time you load that map, you have started a brand new game of Dota. In the same way that when a bunch of people get to the soccer field, you have started a new game of soccer. Now, there are some things that you've taken with you, your previous experiences, your pre-developed skills, your strategies, your styles, your tactics, whatever. That applies to both of these things. But there's something that you can learn from every match. And even if it's not obvious right away, you save the replay, you watch something, there's guaranteed at least one thing that you've done in that match that you could have improved on. And if you are willing to make everything you do count, it pays off so much more. I mean, how many things have you done, and not you rhetorically, how many things have you done in life that have just kind of not meant anything, that have been discarded or thrown away? And why did you not care? Why did you not give this as much a consideration as it was deserving? And the reason why is because you don't think it matters, or I don't think it matters. But gaming has taught me to make things matter, because as important as the game is, that's how much of that matters. As important as this date is, that's how much it matters. No more, no less. I don't know what it's going to be like with newer generations growing up, just being exposed to how much content there is out there. But I sure as hell hope that even newer generations understand things have to matter as much as they can. Things shouldn't be discardable. They shouldn't be removable right away. It should last as long as it can possibly last.
Well, your analogy about starting a new game, like especially since we keep using Dota 2 on this as an example in here, something that frustrated me a lot about the character Silencer for a while was that, he's stealing your intelligence whenever you die near him. And, that almost completely stopped when I just, remembered, well, this is just a match. Like, next match, everything's reset. Silencer doesn't have any of the intelligence he's stolen. I still have all my real-life intelligence, and my characters get, it's a frustrating mechanic because it's depriving me of a mana pool, but at the same time, it's here, you deal with it, you move on. And I think we need to probably start drawing some more parallels to real life. So as I mentioned before, when people are pissing me off in real life, I just do a quick assessment of how much this is really worth it. And you'd be surprised how many times walking away is in fact the right option. Mm-hmm. There's, leadership skills that I mentioned. I would also like to, I think I mentioned this example on the show before, but I'd like to bring it up again. And that was in the first Witcher game. I stopped playing that game because I was presented with a moral choice that I, as a human being, could not rectify. Now, I think I have done, I'm pretty sure I've done this. Okay, yeah, so I'm not going to go into details, but that, that carried with me for several days. That stayed with me. I mean, not only the fact that, hey, I stopped playing a game because I was given two choices and I hated, and, neither were good and neither were, I couldn't get my way out of it, but it really did introduce me to the whole idea of just, even in real life, of being caught between, nothing is good, nothing is, we all at our core want to believe in the binary system. Even if, we think we've evolved past that, fundamentally, if we can say, this is the right choice, this is the bad choice, it makes things easier. If you're put between a rock and a hard place, and you've got a pickaxe in your hand, well, this was easy. It was basically a very huge, how far can we take this personification of there is no right choice, there is no big thing, and you have to kind of learn that. I mean, that's almost like a loss of innocence kind of moment when you realize that the superheroes are all in the comic books, that, nothing is really perfect, and you're going to have to either make compromises or do something that doesn't benefit everyone. There is no magic. You pick these, binary one or two choices, and then you get the harem ending.
How many lives did you take to rescue the princess?
Yeah. And, do you think of them differently just because they're, like turtles and Goombas? Well, they got eyeballs, and clearly they can walk, so, we're getting somewhere. And, especially if you look at modern military shooters, I mean, how many of these people do you just slaughter en masse for no apparent reason?
Yeah.
I remember Spec Ops The Line, someone did a run-through where they played it as much like a modern military shooter as they could, and it basically involved them slaughtering people for the sake of slaughtering people. Yeah. And it's well, this is the modern military shooter mentality in a game that's kind of laughing at you for it or pointing out the huge fallacy in it.
Yeah. I have to admit, I think it was the Call of Duty Modern Warfare 2 where you are involved in a terrorist assault. And I'm not talking about that, but what I'm talking about is how that triggered a war between Russia and the United States, and the Russians are invading the United States, and you have to fight off the Russians, and the whole war was based off a misunderstanding. And everyone was innocent, but they were fighting each other because of that misunderstanding. And that's a really heavy, like what you're saying about empathy, that's a very, very heavy empathy to be considering while you're shooting it. Not that I think most of the Call of Duty fans really got that, but at least they tried. So
I really feel like it's just on the checklist. We don't have to have one controversial level per game.
Yeah, fair. Well, I mean, the story was controversial. It extended, but I know what you mean with the mass shooting in the airport. Very very ballsy of them, though. Anyways, so let's talk about some other things, real life. The reasons why I talked about that regret right in the beginning is it was the community aspect and the social aspect that does not get the credit that it deserved for a very long time. I mean, gaming, assuming that. I mean, even single-player games are still a very social activity.
Elder Scrolls is considered to be a very popular water cooler game because it would come out, people would play it, they would come into work. It's like, so, I was playing Elder Scrolls yesterday and I, did this with this thing. It's like, oh, really? Well, I did this and this thing and it led to this. Oh, yeah. That's a very interesting choice. I was considering that, but, here's why I went with mine. Because it was a game with branching story paths, and let's face it, at a pretty early point, you can just say, fuck the story, screw it, I'm going to pick a direction, and I'm going to start walking. And the game was really designed with, do that.
Yeah. That was my favorite part, as after the whole introduction sequence, and you finally get out of the prison, and the guy's like, well, I'm going to be in town over here if you need me. And then he just starts walking away. And I look in one direction, and I turn, and I look in another direction. And I look in the third direction, and there's a fourth direction that way.
And then there's Dennis.
And then there's Dennis. I can just go. I can do anything I want.
Yeah.
And it's great. But yeah, being able to talk about... I mean, it's kind of fun, but I think the Skyrim and the ones before that have encouraged social activity better than the MMO did.
Yeah, because you have stories now. You have had a character, and they've had their own
experiences.
Story.
I mean, that's life. I mean, Skyrim, Elder Scrolls is the same thing as just living your life. I mean, my life isn't multiplayer; it's single player with some very detailed NPC interaction. So, that's it. That's what Skyrim is. Although the NPC interaction isn't nearly as great as it is in real life, it's still
hello, Norn.
That's what it is. You just you share your experience with people. Now I know for a fact that there will be generations who may view this video who will not know what an arcade is, and that sucks because arcades were a social pinnacle for gaming. There were, I can't believe I'm reminiscing about this. Arcades will be back. Oh, they'll be back. But yeah, you would go into a place, probably in a mall somewhere. And there would be 50 or so arcade cabinets set up, different games that you can play, and you would meet other people playing the game with you. I mean, it encouraged walking up to somebody, putting in a coin, and challenging that person to a match. And it happens, and it happened quite a bit, and you would learn something from this random stranger who's just really good on their character.
Like, I remember there's been some times where I go to Palladium and someone's doing, like, House of the Dead single player, and it's just like, hey, do you want a co-op partner?
Yeah.
So they just come in, pick up a gun, and I found a lot of times they'll actually say no, because if there's two people in it, everyone's got double health, but that's what headshots are for!
There was this one action game, I think it was called, like, Johnny Nero Action Hero, and there was 3 modes you can do. One was just, like, one pistol. One was balls to the wall mode, where you would get both pistols, first player and second player. And then there was first player and second player mode. Whereas balls to the wall was just one player. So I deliberately put 2 coins into first player and second player, and had 2 separate health bars. That was a lot of fun.
Yeah, that does sound tactically advantageous until you realize that one of the health bars go down. You're now like, okay, where's the quarter?
It wasn't the optimal strategy. The optimal strategy was to do the balls to the wall mode and just have one gun permanently shooting away from the screen, so you were constantly reloading, and then you would never have to run out of ammo. You would just shoot. Got pretty far doing that. And just aside from arcades and being able to talk about it, gaming encourages people to now meet each other based off that interest. Meetup.com is a tremendous website that basically any interest...
Is also not paying us.
No, but, would be nice. You can go and you type in whatever you want, and there's a good chance that somebody is as interested in that as you, and it turns out that there's a whole bunch of them that get together to do that. And if there's not... well, then you start the group, and then you start promoting it, and next thing you know, you have met a bunch of people who see eye to eye with you, and you've been brought together because of this shared interest, which is the game.
Yeah.
I mean, you know, aside from like hobbies and professions that are interesting, especially ones that require like creative collaboration. I mean, gaming is really the most social thing that you can really do. I mean, you get together at a bar to watch a sports game. That's a game that is very popular that everybody is in on. What gets people together better? What draws people into a bar better than any sports activity? Nothing. Music. The musicians bring their own friends. Karaoke? Well, karaoke is pretty popular, I'll give it that. But the karaoke is even kind of a game. It's the game of trying to sing.
Yeah, you get up there and you throw your charisma saves and hope it works.
Yeah.
Well, gaming is very unique and it's very much deliberately interactive. Like, reading a book, I believe, is a very interactive thing because you're doing a theater of the mind. You're imagining the characters, you're imagining the world.
Yeah.
Gaming is a literal interactive thing. Like, there is no theater of the mind. It's, here is a story portrayed in this particular path, this particular way. Like, you are essentially creating something every time you play it. And even inaction is an action, although not all games register inaction as an action, unless you're playing Stanley Parable. And you're creating, essentially, the modern games and, multiple paths. You are creating a story, you're creating an experience. And multiplayer games means you're creating experience with your friends. You have the water cooler thing. And it's not a bad reason to get together, because long before gaming was as big as it was, we still were coming apart. I think a lot of people, especially from our generation, are looking at this generation, the ones to come, and wondering how exactly all this is happening, because we've lost a lot of our high school clubs. We've lost a lot of our extracurricular activities. We have essentially all separated again into our own rooms. It's not, spend time after school and talk about your friends what's happening anymore. It's go home so you can check Facebook to see what's happening. And we've all very much come apart, but we are finding reasons to come back together. And
they're good reasons. It's actually going to do the thing that you want to do, as opposed to picking something close enough just to get you out of the house.
Yeah, and genre in general, like gaming, sci-fi, fantasy, novels, like all that stuff in general, was something that traditionally got you ostracized because the whole value of strength. I always have the theory that every time we're going through a war, the social structure changes, that the strongs are the ones that are popular, and whenever we're at a time of peace, it's the intellectuals are the ones who are popular. Yeah. So we had a lot of that for a while. We had, World War I, II, Cold War, and the reminiscence of that and the movies from that kind of perpetuated that. Now, then we all went home. We all sort of had these shared interests that in the beginning weren't really that shareable. I mean, the idea of one person playing Mario and everybody else sitting and watching, right off the bat, like especially when that was cutting edge technology, wasn't exactly that good. But we did eventually start finding each other again, and we are starting to come together to enjoy things. I, last week, went to a Hearthstone event, even though I absolutely suck at Hearthstone, and I met a bunch of new people and we talked. I run board game events regularly with the Geekalicious group. I've seen people gather together in real life to play Smash Brothers. It's becoming a reason to do something, because the whole idea of let's just hang out, I think, died very quickly. Like, hey, you and me, let's just go to the mall and sit. Let's just hang. Let's not do anything.
Yeah.
It feels unproductive and hollow. I mean, yes, it's great seeing you, but at the same time, we're not really doing something. Alternatively, you want to come over to my house so I can, show you Guilty Gear, this fighting game I'm passionate about. That's something. We're doing something. We've made a plan to play Guilty Gear. There's a good chance we're going to be spending more than half the time not playing Guilty Gear.
Yeah.
But we've created something to do. Like, here is a quasi-goal for us to quasi-achieve in Placido ways.
Mm-hmm. It really does fill up your week between what else it is you have going on. I mean, if you're working, if you're taking care of family, any free time that you have, I mean, what could be better than spending it playing a game somewhere? And like you're saying, you don't have to do it at home anymore. You can just go to different events. You can go to the Geekalicious board game event. You can go. I've been to a chess event a couple of times now, and like the games will dictate who you meet. I mean, chess players are a bunch of smart motherfuckers. Like they're very well spoken and polite, and like, oh, these are a bunch of friendly fucking people here.
And socializing, even during the age where supposedly it was mastered, I don't really believe that. Like this whole thing, like, oh, we used to socialize more, do all this, do. I'm pretty sure it was just as awkward and weird back then as it is now.
I think we've improved socially,
But
like knowledge has grown, information has grown, the ability to speak has changed,
Well,
and language has evolved.
I really feel like the death of the after school club and the rise of social media, I think, has caused a degree of separation.
Okay,
But the point, the way you learn to be better at socializing is by socializing, and you always need a starting point. And experiences are a great starting point. Like you can say, hey, I went to Wonderland this weekend. And also everyone who went to Wonderland has talked to you about what was your favorite ride, what was this. And even if you're not good at socializing, here you go. Here's a bunch of people. You're socializing. Get some practice in.
Yeah.
And, games...
Even like the shyest person probably has at least like one or two things that they are very passionate about and they would love to talk about for hours.
Yeah, and gaming is on the rise, and it does create unique experiences, and it does create a starting point for talking. I think that nerds can be incredibly sociable. The big thing is that we're just not very, big on the idea of hanging out for the sake of hanging out. Let us go to this intersection to stand, and hopefully we will socialize and abuse air quotes. It's a starting point, and the more you talk, the better you get at talking, because you can, unless you're talking to somebody but looking dead over here, you get an idea what their facial reactions are, you get an idea how they're acting, you get an idea of, what they're saying, and just more practice, more practice, more practice.
Yeah. Now, let's shift a little bit. There's one other benefit that there was one new one that I thought of, but there's another one that I hadn't gotten to yet. So I'll get to that one before I forget it again. But one of the things that I've noticed about gaming is that it has also been used as a way to teach me about who I am as a person. It has helped me to understand my play style. The more games I play, the more I find my style, and the more I can apply that style back into other games. But even beyond that, gaming has taught me a lot about my own personality, because the games that I play allow so much of my personality to be influenced. Because you have so much control over your character, you can do things very differently. Like, I have noticed that people consider me to be a defensive person. Like, if somebody is saying something that I might take offense to, I might take offense to things a little bit easier than other people, and that puts me on the defensive. Knowing that, that's something that I would test out in gaming and see if I can adapt a defensive playstyle. And it turns out that I'm really quite good at that particular style. And so I'm like, well, that's me now. Doing validating it through gaming helps me understand it in person, and it helps me to work on how I can improve, but still be me. You can't just go your whole life eliminating parts about you, especially if you don't like them. You have to learn to row through your personality, both your positive and negative qualities. And gaming will show you that. If you're willing to learn, if you're willing to actually, like I'm saying earlier, open up your mind to see what it is that you did wrong in the situation, you can teach yourself to become a better person through your interactions in the game. And you mentioned that too with your discussion in The Witcher. You learned that sometimes you aren't ready to make a decision. Did you ever go back to that, ever?
It's always intended to, but other games come up on the list, other things happen.
Yeah, things get in the way. I still never beat Morrowind, so I know what you mean.
It's also sort of a matter of a more technical level, in it that the game did crash on occasion, and I know it wasn't my computer because I exceeded the specs. It's a matter of the engine itself. Yeah. You tried to do a little bit too much in the engine. There was a potion you can take called Blizzard, which when you drink it, time seems to flow slower, and your character can now reflex block a lot easier. Reflexively? No.
Reflex block sounds right.
Yeah, and a whole bunch of stuff like that. But I did it in the middle of what was essentially a big boss fight, and all of a sudden, I guess the game slowed to the point where it crashed. And there's other little moments where, like, I guess if there's too many things on the screen, and you know, I pretty much just stopped using Blizzard altogether after that. But if there's too many stuff on the screen, like, it's a lot of excuses, and ultimately I want to get back to it. I probably would have to start from the beginning. I don't know if after the crash and the reboot I still have the data of where I was, but you know, I've always wanted to, and it's always something that I feel like I'd be a little bit more prepared to tackle right now. And
having grown as a person.
I'm still not quite sure what my decision would be, but what I would do is I would start from the beginning, work my way up to that moment again, pay attention to pay attention to what the world is telling me through its own crafting, and use that to really, you know, make that hard decision.
Yeah.
And if I apply that to real life, then I'm a really good person.
Right on. All right, last thing for me. Professionally, gaming is also incredibly useful. The gaming industry is on par with, if not surpassing, the film industry. There are hundreds of thousands of jobs that have now been created thanks to the gaming industry.
Just quickly a moment, the whole idea of orchestrated music, something which I personally really love, has become incredibly popular because of gaming. Like they went from having chip tunes to a bunch of synthesizers to, I remember seeing something for the Halo game where like, oh, here's the size of the orchestra we had to use to make the soundtrack for the game. And then Dota 2 comes around with the first time they ever did a music package that, bitch, please, this is the size of our orchestra! Up yours!
Yeah. It's amazing. I mean, it provides work for programmers, for artists, for musicians, people of many different kinds of talents that all come together to create these packages. And even if you're not into the game creation, there's still the games industry in terms of coverage. We do need people to cover games and to promote games and to help us be exposed to gaming, even if there's a lot of turmoil with the whole journalism thing. But that's okay. That'll fix it. I truly believe that shit will sort itself out. But yeah, you can work in the games industry and never actually touch a game. You can be involved in publishing. You can be involved in marketing, distribution. You can be involved in promotion, public relations. You can be involved in journalism and writing about it. And if none of that is good for you, then one step back from that, and you be an event organizer. You be somebody who gets people together to play a game, and you take a cut of the door or whatever, and you can start to make money just creating a space for people to come play. That alone is not only very beneficial because it lends itself to all the other benefits of gaming, like social aspect and self-improvement and fun, which is always a nice benefit, but it can turn into something that can teach you responsibility and can very well be and a responsibility for you. There is so much work involved in gaming. The irony is just, it's beautiful.
Mm-hmm. All right, so in terms of video gaming, and I'm going to expand this to sort of genre in general and all that stuff, making you a better person. The White Knight Complex.
Okay, we're going to make this the last thing that we talk about.
Definitely.
And then wrap up.
Yeah. Well, White Knight Complex is typically looked down upon as just a variant on the Peter Pan syndrome, which is typically associated with men, essentially that they just never want to grow up and want to be a kid forever. The White Knight Complex is essentially...
I hated being a kid. Are you fucking kidding me? No, I'm not. I'm just doing that to be funny. I just keep going.
Yeah, the idea is that you mentally aspire to be like essentially a white knight, whether literally or figuratively. You aspire to the age of chivalry, where you are nice to people, where you are honorable, where you always keep your word. And this is often perceived as silly because you're essentially a heroic fight. You're picturing yourself as a hero. You're picturing yourself as an actual crusader type person, as essentially an over romanticized knight, so to speak.
Yep.
But what exactly is bad about this? Like, you hold doors open for people because you're polite. You are nice to everyone you meet instinctively, and you wait for them to give you a reason not to like you. You don't just hate people off the bat. You say you have to earn the hatred I will eventually give you. You try to do nice things. You go out of your way for people. You aspire to the romanticized version of chivalry, which everyone says is dead. And what's wrong with that? If I want to pick my heroes based on, D&D characters and fantasy people who go around saving the fucking day, that's pretty good role models. I mean, yeah, you can probably pick from a decent number of people in real life, and you probably should, because there are a lot of good role models in real life. But what is wrong if my role models aren't really real? What is wrong if I look up to space paladins? You know what? They've got a pretty damn good code of honor. Do not lie, do not steal, do not... I don't know, because space paladins don't actually exist. But these are good people, essentially, to aspire to be like. What is wrong with having the white knight complex? What is wrong with wanting to be the hero, with wanting to save people, with wanting to do good things? And, maybe that leads you to doing charity work, maybe that leads you to joining the army, or maybe that just leads you to holding the door open for a couple of extra people in the subway station, because you know what? You're not in a rush, and it's good to be polite.
I think the reason why anybody would insult you or take umbrage with that is because they probably lack or have not experienced the kind of suffering necessary to know right from wrong. I mean, some people, they just they get shit flung at them, but it doesn't even occur to them that they're shit, and they just, I don't know, grow up to be a sociopath or something. I'm not saying that if you're not good, you're a sociopath, although that wouldn't be the worst way to divide society. It's just that being good stems from understanding how much it can hurt to have been wronged, or how much you can hurt somebody else if you were to wrong somebody else. It comes from knowing what is right, even if it's at no convenience to you whatsoever, even if like 100 people think you're wrong. It's about having that gut feeling and standing up for that. So I'm completely with you on white knighting. It's just being a good person. It's not like calling me a white knight is like an upgrade. Like, you didn't have to call me that. You don't have to call me a knight. That's awesome. Thank you. I'll take it. Like I had a lot of different characters in media and in real life to have been exposed myself to, but for whatever reason, it was Link from The Legend of Zelda that kind of acted as a role model for me, because here was a guy who puts up with a lot of shit in his life. Yeah. Like he spends his first 12 years without a fairy, and everybody else has a fairy. Like, hey dick, where's your fairy? Hey, he doesn't have a fairy. We're gonna play poker. You can't come. You don't have a fairy, dick. And that's his life.
They're totally using their fairies to cheat off everyone else's cards.
Oh yeah, for sure. It's a fairy completely changes the poker metagame in Kokiri Forest. But when called on to do the right thing, he still does the right thing, and he does it without complaining. He just does it because he knows it's the right thing to do. It's not even a debate for him. It's not even a moral thing. It's just, that's obviously the right thing to do. Why would I question that?
It's sort of the idea of aspiring to be better than you are and aspiring to live in a better world than you do live in. There's that quote from the Don Quixote opera, which I think I like whipping out. I probably have said it on this show before. I feel like I'm repeating myself a lot right now. But
you've actually managed to mention the fact that you're repeating it, so it's fine.
Yeah. The quote, the whole point of Don Quixote is, here's a guy who possibly, maybe this is the stigma associated with the white knight complex. He is a old person who's essentially become bored, then become infused or completely infatuated with the romantic knight ideal. He goes out to be a knight. He goes out to fight things, whatever. And there's this one quote from the opera, which isn't in the books, where perhaps too much sanity is to be insane, to see the world as it is and not as it ought to be. And that should be on a t-shirt.
That's actually pretty deep. Thanks for watching.